I don't think we choose our moral principles. I think we're raised with them. They sink in, as do our prejudices. They sink in when we're kids and we don't know what they're talking about. But gradually we work it out that the things are like this. And I think that it would be different. And it's also a cultural thing. Italians have a different view of basic ethics from what Anglo-Saxons have. And it's much more malleable, it's much more flexible than is that of the Anglo-Saxons.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the most to have.
Books really saved my life.
So, I mean, given the fact that the current events are so dramatic right now, I feel like we do have to start with what's happening in Venice. Are your friends all right? What's happening?
I
people
get
you know.
email. I'm in email contact with my friends in Venice. One man that I know has died. He's not a friend, but he's someone I've known for 30, 35 years. Healthy, tall, active, fit. Go figure. Most of my friends in Venice write and say how wonderful it is, because no people are there. No. I don't see it as funny, because I understand them, and I would probably, if I were there, I'd probably be saying the same thing, except they're out with very few people walking around, so there's little danger of contagion. But what I hear of the situation in the rest of Italy is pretty desperate, that the country is not prepared for something this extensive, but neither is the United States. And I think that will be shown in the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks. Who knows how long this is going on. I will confess that I went back and forth, yes, no, about coming on the trip, because I've been in America for 9 days, I think 9 or 10 days, and then came to Montreal 2 days ago, and now here. And tomorrow I go back to Zurich. And I wanted to be able to be home when and if it happened. That was my major concern, that I not be stuck in a foreign country and be a problem to somebody else's health system. I just wanted to go home and see what happened. But I think this is a kind of natural instinct. An animal would feel like this. Mm-hmm. I want to be in my nest when and if it happens.
Your latest books are very eco-minded.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the Earth is mad at us? I've heard some people's theory that Mother Nature is just happy to bump off 2%.
Yeah, there's that Lovelock guy who has the Gaia theory, that the planet is in reality a being or a unit, and when it's time to clean it off, it does. I think ultimately the cause is ecological. If what I've read, that it is the result of one Chinese person killing a bat and eating the bat, then the cause is environmental, because the bat is living in a place where people previously did not go, or the bat would have moved. So the bat was taken by surprise, killed and eaten, and the man who should not have been there in the habitat of the bat, caused all of this. Mm-hmm. This is what's going, I think, because I'm a catastrophist where the environment is concerned, this is what's going to be happening with greater and greater frequency. So in a way, I think it's linked to the fires in California, the fires in Australia. We have messed it up. And we, as a species, we seem not to be in the least bit interested in doing what we know has to be done, because nobody wants to give up their washing machine or their dryer. I was just visiting my brother in America, who lives in a kind of old person's ghetto. It's a section of 330 houses, all very, very pretty and very nice with the lawn mowed, and they all have dryers. And I said, why don't you just hang your stuff outside? And my sister-in-law said, it's forbidden by the rules of the community. You cannot hang your wash outside. And I said, why? And she said, oh, I don't know. I said, it's because you have to use your dryer. So here are 330 people who are constrained to use their dryer all the time. Doesn't anybody think that maybe the age of the dryer is behind us? Or should be behind us? But I'm a screaming, crazy loony about the environment and about waste.
Fair enough. Just out of curiosity, a little show of hands here. Who in the crowd has read more than 2 Brunettis? Okay, we're going to winnow you now. Who in the crowd has read more than 10? 10. Okay, that's pretty good. And here we are at number 29, and there is a very strong environmental component.
Yeah,
We don't want to give away the plot, but it's a lot about complicity and what people know, and the crime isn't so much the crime, is it? I mean, the crime is much more the ignoring of the potential disaster.
But I would like to remind those of you who have read the earlier books, I think the environmental interest is manifest in one of the early books when Brunetti's taking a shower, and he hears boom, 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 boom on the door, and it's the kids. And he says, oh, water police. And the kids are nagging him because he has 5 minutes to take a shower. And that's it. And then he gets banged on the door. That was put in as a joke. 10 books later, Signorina Elettra brings in separated garbage at the Questura. And it's still sort of a joke. But it's not a joke anymore. Earthly Remains was a book about what has been done to the Laguna. And continues to be done to the Laguna because it's all leaking out. And this book, too, deals with the environment. I have Richard Powers is an old friend of mine. I met him in Zurich last November, and I told him, Richard, I start a book, and it gets kidnapped, and it wants to be an ecological book or an environmental book. What am I going to do? This is the guy who won the Pulitzer for his environmental book. And he said, well, is there a better topic, or is there a more important topic to write about? And I said, by God, he's right. So I'm going to be the old lady, the old crazy old lady in the corner writing the environmental book. Burn your dryers!
So how much do you know about a book when you begin? Do you
Nothing.
start with an image or an idea, or?
I know nothing. I get an idea about something that might have happened, so I have the thing happen. And then I see where that leads. In this book, Trace Elements, I always forget the titles. I started a book that was going to be about something else, and I wrote 50 pages in which someone is killed. Maybe it's an accident, maybe it's not an accident. I didn't know. But I wrote 50 pages talking about how Brunetti gets sucked into helping someone, making a promise to help someone. And after 50 pages, I said, I don't want to write about that. So I said, yeah, well, maybe the guy worked at the water. But for the first month or two of writing this book, it was going somewhere else. And so if you were surprised by things happen in the book, you were in my company. Because very often I just don't know.
Do you ditch those first 50 pages then, or do you just be like, okay, now that was
No. I was lucky in that there were 50 pages in which someone died in suspicious circumstances. Mm-hmm. The cause of which I did not, when I wrote those pages, know. But I thought it was going to be this. But then I thought, no, it could be that. And I didn't have to change any of the 50 pages because the guy still got killed.
So you really don't know where it's going. You find out along with us.
Absolutely clueless.
Have you ever dried up? Like, have you ever run into something you couldn't write your way out of?
No.
Oh, that's just. Don't you love the way she says it? Like, anyone could do that. I mean, your output to me, who pretends to be a writer from time to time, is so humbling. Have you ever not had your next idea? No. Incredible.
No, this is because every day I read La Nuova Venezia and Il Gazzettino, the local papers. So every day. Also, just to soothe your conscience, a manuscript of one of these books has 365 pages. Does that number sound familiar to anyone?
You really write a page a day?
No, I don't write a page a day. But that's my obligation.
Huh.
At the end of the time that I'm writing a book, I have produced 365 pages, give or take 10 or 20 pages, to produce a book. That means if I wanted to, if I were disciplined enough, I could write a page a day, and that would be the end of it. I write in spurts. Maybe I don't write for a month, and then I just get the desire to get on with it, to try to find out what's happening. And then I just don't do anything except work for 10 days or 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I might produce 30 or 40 pages of manuscript. And then I go on holiday. I can go and play some more.
Have you heard tell of these writers who then have to go back and start again and rewrite? That's not you.
No.
Wow. And when you are thinking this through, do you start with the case, the crime, or do you start with the theme and the sort of overriding subject that you're really talking about?
No, I just think about the beginning of the story. There was one a long time ago where I was thinking about something, and I thought about, I had not a vision, but I imagined a truck going off a slippery, snowy road and going down the hill and slamming into a tree, and then having the back door open and bodies fall out. I don't know where that came from, but that started the book. But when I started the book, I had no idea where the book was going. But that's the way it works. And luckily, it has worked that way for me for a long time.
For 30 books.
Almost with every book.
Wow. Do you ever just not feel like writing?
No. I write the books, but I have a real serious involvement with an orchestra. So I am really, the books are dependent upon the orchestra, because I go to their rehearsals, I go to their performances, I go to the rehearsals for discs. Last year, I spent the first 3 weeks of January in Dobbiaco in northern Italy for the recording of Agrippina with Joyce DiDonato. And those of you who are, if you are opera crazies, you know that Joyce is the leader of the pack at the moment. And then I went on tour with the orchestra and with Joyce to see 4 of the concert versions. So I just wrote off January because I was going to be a camp follower for the orchestra. And this trip, my publisher wants me to come every year, and I fight that off because I don't want to do that. But this time I said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. I will make a deal. You can have me for 10 days, but I want 2 days with my brother in New Jersey before the tour. I want to go to Montreal so I can see my friend Judith Flanders in Montreal. But the big thing is I want on March 7th to be in New York so I can go to the opera and see Joyce sing Agrippina. And they know I'm crazy, so they said, okay, we'll do, all right. So the rest of the trip, like the rest of my life, is sort of peripheral to the music thing.
And you are actually finishing a book right now.
I have
amidst all
about
that.
maybe 50 pages to
50
go.
pages ago. And okay, I'm gonna stop belaboring this point in a minute. I just have to really ask until I can ask no more. Like, do you ever sort of, I have to go take a walk now because it's just not flowing? Like, is there something that you do when you encounter even the slightest resistance, or is it really just coming all the time?
No. Sometimes I don't know where it's going because I don't have an outline. So sometimes I just can't figure out what should happen next. Then I go out for a coffee or I go for a walk. And when I come back, usually unconsciously, because I really don't spend a lot of time thinking about them. And strangely enough, I almost never talk about them.
Wow. And so if you're at page 360 and you're not wrapped up yet, do you like hasten?
No, because that means that I don't know yet what it is. So I have to just let some time pass and the ideas will come. I am certain that somewhere in my head I'm going forward with the books and working things out. But it's at some unconscious level that I choose not to I don't want to mess with it because it works.
Yes, I would not mess with it if I were you. I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about you. Were you always a calm person? Were you always a steady person who had faith in yourself? What kind of kid were you?
I was blessed by the fact that I had a happy family life. My family was happy. I feel today, in the age of confessional books about how miserably people suffered for ages, I have to confess that I had a happy upbringing. I liked and loved my parents. I liked and loved my brother. I liked and loved the dog. We were just the standard American family. I didn't know until high school that people hated their parents. And it was too late. And I was lucky that I was raised absolutely without ambition. I'm sure my parents didn't sleep nights because I just wanted to go to university and read a lot of books and write about books and talk about books. And
So you were always a reader. You were always
I was always a reader.
kid.
My parents were readers. My brother was a reader. And I never in my life ever had a real job. I had temporary jobs as teaching assistants at university while I was working on my PhD. I had a one-year job that wasn't continued, teaching at a small American college. I went to Iran to teach English to helicopter pilots, and that was blown away by, sort of had a job, but I wasn't going to stay there. That was blown away by the revolution. I went to China for a year, but it was a one-year contract. I went to Saudi Arabia for 9 months. And then I came back and I got a job. Went back to Italy and settled in Venice. And I got a job with the University of Maryland teaching English, but my contract was renewed every 8 weeks. So I never, ever in my life had a real job where I knew I could have that job the next year if I wanted it, or if they wanted me. And that didn't seem peculiar to me because I didn't want to become the boss. That never seemed to make any sense to me. I just wanted to have a job I liked and have a lot of fun. And I have.
So let's just back up for a second. You were in grad school in Iran, is that right?
No, I was teaching in Iran.
You were teaching in Iran.
I was teaching basic English to helicopter pilots. But I realized early on that wasn't a whole lot of fun. So I got myself transferred. A friend of mine got me transferred to a department that didn't do anything. So for 3.5 years, I played tennis. No, I really did. In fact, I won in 1970-something. I won the Pahlavi. The Shah his family name was Pahlavi. I won the Pahlavi Cup in Esfahan, Iran, for women's singles.
Wow.
But when we were evacuated, I left the Pahlavi Cup behind.
So who knows where it is now?
Who knows where it is?
And after that, you went to New York and briefly wrote advertising copy, is that correct?
I did. No, but I did that. I don't remember when I did that.
Huh.
But then I went to China.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to go back to graduate school.
And how quickly after going to Italy the first time did you move to Italy?
I didn't move to Italy until about 15 years after that.
Okay.
But I went back every year, once or twice.
Okay.
But for long periods.
And what made you start your life in crime novels? What was the...
I'm glad you added that noun, that second noun. I was in the dressing room at La Fenice speaking to a conductor friend of mine. And he and his wife and I started talking about another conductor, and there was an escalation. Or I'll give you the Italian word, escalation. And we were thinking about how he could be killed in the dressing room. And I thought, what a great idea that would be for a murder mystery. I wonder if I could.
And then you just went and sat down and just...
And wrote it, yeah.
Had you been a fan of crime novels?
Yeah, I was when I was in graduate school because I was both a student and a teaching assistant. So I was busy all the time during the day, either teaching literature or being taught literature and reading a lot. So when I went back to my apartment, I didn't want to have to think about what I read, so I read murder mysteries because there's just that line. They're all pretty much on this. They all follow the same track. So I just imposed upon what I was writing what I had interiorized during years and years of reading them. Wow. No, I like them. Ross MacDonald, Ruth Rendell.
Right. So how many pages into your first one did you think, I'm doing this thing, like this is for real?
Well, it became fun. And so I didn't think of it as a chore because I had a whole lot of fun writing it. But after I finished it, I put it in a drawer because I wanted to write it. And I was happy because I had written it. And then I was nagged into sending it to a competition in Japan, which it won.
Wow.
And that's why the book was published.
Wow.
No, I
Sorry,
told you.
I'm
no,
just going to keep saying that
no,
all
I'm
night
really
long.
I don't have any ambition.
Yeah.
I just want to have fun.
And that's what keeps you doing it. Like just your next idea occurs and you're
Yeah.
just thinking, okay, well, as long as I have that idea, I'll just keep
I'll do
going.
it. And when it's not fun, I'll stop.
Okay. Let's talk about your characters because, I mean, obviously you have created some really fantastic characters. I mean, do we have to say Signora Elettra is our favorite character in the world? Everybody wants to be her, right? Is there anything she can't or won't do? Have you ever drawn a line for her?
No, I needed her. I forget what book. It was one of the early books. Brunetti was having trouble with something, and I was having trouble with the book. So I went out and had a coffee and a walk. And when I came back, before I left, someone knocked on the door of Brunetti's office. And I went out and had a walk, and when I came back, it was Signorina Elettra. I don't know.
But then did you just sort of start embroidering? Like, what if she could do anything? What if she could find her way into any computer?
No, I am a Neanderthal with a computer. I can write text and answer and send emails, and that's it. So I needed someone who could do all of the things that I knew were possible if you knew about computers. So the narrator tells what she did, but not how she did it.
Right.
But I know enough of the computer jargon to make it sound as though I know what I'm talking about, but I don't.
And so, of course, we never have to worry about how she does it because she's Deus Ex Elettra. She can do whatever she wants.
That's nice. Oh, thank you.
It is yours now. I also love Paola, the wife. Do we all love her? I love that the tone of their marriage isn't sentimental. Paola especially is very dry with him. You know what I mean? They love each other, but she's never going to be sort of gushy about all that. How did you settle on that as the proper tone for their relationship?
Because I think that after long cohabitation, people don't gush a whole lot anymore. They speak to one another, and I think they try to score points with one another with amusing the person. And so we do it with our friends. And I think that in a long 30-year marriage or some sort of intimate duo, you run out of the gooey stuff. And the person has become as much friend as lover. And so there's shared amusement. And it seemed a natural way for her to talk to him.
I also love the way, when she's saying her funniest things, it's her flattest, and she's obviously not making eye contact with. I have a whole vision of their relationship. And I feel like we all do, right? And yet you barely describe, I'm not sure you ever really describe what Brunetti looks like.
No.
You've never, was that a conscious choice?
Yeah, I suppose. I'm very bad at physical description of people.
But there, you describe other people, the
but
people they meet.
not in enormous detail, because I know that's not something I do well.
Do you have a picture in your mind of him? Do you know what he looks like to you?
Yeah, I do, except I will see people on the street. I will see men on the street in Venice and say, yeah, he could be Brunetti, but then I'll see someone who looks nothing like him, and he could be Brunetti as well.
So you don't have like is there an American movie star who you could, is
No.
it George Clooney as Brunetti? No. Huh. And when did he, in your mind, did he always read the classics? And do you take care to match the classic to the plot? Where does that part come in?
One of the great things about the classics is that if you, particularly the plays, I think, if you know them well, you can take a line to suit almost any circumstance in a crime novel. Open up the Trojan Women, and you'll find lots of misery. Open up Agamemnon, and you'll find lots of suffering, and lots of rage, and lots of duplicity. And so I think the truth is that Brunetti, in every book, is reading what I'm reading. Because I have chosen at this point in my life to go back to the classics. I read them in translation, I read them in English. Because I think that there's a reason they've been around for 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. Because they say things that make you say, yeah. And so in one of the recent books, he was reading the Trojan Women, and I was overwhelmed by it, because the same thing is happening today in these war zones, that the women are just sort of gathered up and sold to the highest bidder and discarded when what's-his-nose gets tired of her. It's all in the Trojan Women. The Greeks did the same thing 2,000 years ago, or 2,500 years ago.
I also love the way you sort of calibrate Brunetti's own moral code. He's a policeman, but he is not a policeman the way we would see it in an American cop show or anything like that. He is not macho. He's not out there sure that he's smarter than all the criminals. In this book, you even mention that he was deprived of a deep understanding of people, and that more cases to show him that he understands nothing. He doesn't pretend to be wised up. Mm-hmm. Why did you make him that way?
Because I think that people of a certain seriousness and a certain spiritual, if I can use that word, and mental kind realize that they don't know everything. And I think much of the trouble in this world is caused by people who know they know everything. I'm far enough from the border to be able to say that safely.
He's also innocent. You know, in this book, there's a Rom girl who is pregnant, and he's shocked that she's a minor, you know, and then he catches himself for being so innocent. And he's rattled by death. You know, when someone dies near him, he is very shook up by this. Yeah. So you've retained his humanity. And yet he's also sort of struggled with a breakdown. How do you calibrate, like, how vulnerable to let him be, and how strong, and yet how sort of still impacted by the things that he sees?
I think that must be terribly difficult for policemen to deal with violent death on a day-to-day basis. In Venice, certainly that's not the case. There have been, in the last 29 years, there have been more murders in my books than there have been in Venice. Many, many, many more. The Venetian cops are really pretty good. I know some of them. I go to the Questura because I know a couple of people there, but I just go to chat and see, to check on things. And because they talk openly about what they do, because they've known me for a long time. And I think that the cost to them is vast and profound, to deal with human, their business always involves them in the worst of human behavior. And that, wow. But think of the other jobs, working in a home where there are lots of demented people. That too must have a psychic cost on people. And Brunetti, luckily, has the counterweight, the counterbalance of his family and of the unity that he feels with so many people in the Questura. And I think he needs that ballast to be able to get up every morning and go into the Questura and see, what fresh hell is this?
Mm-hmm. It's also very interesting when you talk about his own sort of moral code, because there are a couple of times in the books where there's money to be had, and he'll be like, just let them have it or give it back. Or, he'll open a bag even though he knows he's not doing it, and the proper rules of evidence. And he lives in a place where the corruption is almost unapologetic, right? That everyone knows everyone's corrupt. And so is he a metaphor for the world? Like, should we all just be like that? Like, accept that there's a relativism and that, there are better and worse ways to be rather than absolute right and absolute wrong?
I don't think we choose that. I don't think we choose our moral principles. I think we're raised with them. They sink in, as do our prejudices. They sink in when we're kids and we don't know what they're talking about. But gradually we work it out that the things are like this. And I think that it would be different. And it's also a cultural thing. Italians have a different view of basic ethics from what Anglo-Saxons have. And it's much more malleable, it's much more flexible than is that of the Anglo-Saxons. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I met a woman on the street. I don't know why, we struck up a conversation. She was maybe my age, but this was easily 30 years ago. And we started talking, and she was obviously disgruntled about something. I said, "What's the matter, senora?" And she said, "Well, I'm having a problem in my house." I said, "What is it?" She said, "I live on the third floor of the house that looks at the house for the old people at San Lorenzo." I said, "Oh yeah, along that canal. Oh, it's that house." I said, "What's your problem?" She said, "Well, you wouldn't believe. I live on the third floor, so I'm on the third floor terrace, and they can't see me, but I can see them, and you should see what they do." L'infermieri, the nurses, male and female, okay? Not the nurses you think women, but infermieri, so at least one of them is male. I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, out on the balcony, a couple of times a week." And I said, "Signora, let me clarify this. Are you saying that these people are out in compromising performance?" Yeah. I said, "But could you tell me why you are so upset about this?" And I'm thinking, I said, is this an offense to public morality or public decency? She said, "No, they should be working." But I didn't make this up. And it was like that to me. I said, that's it. I'm stuck with this idea that two people are out on a balcony making love in any way they choose, that what is wrong with that is that they're doing it on company time. Not that they're doing it. I thought I'll never be Italian. Because that was her instinctive response and my instinctive response. And they're... And Brunetti is more someone who would think and judge that they should be working.
They should be working. Do you feel like you know everything about him? Have you worked out his whole backstory, or does he still surprise you sometimes?
No. He's always remembering stuff. In the last couple of years, he's thinking more and more about his parents, about growing up and having this odd childhood with a father who was a victim of the Second World War and came back shell-shocked and never recovered, and his mother who went to, I think, 4 years of school, but was wise and patient and loving. So he's got this odd parentage that created him, that formed him.
I love also, and some of you may think I'm crazy, that you describe the routes that people take on their way to work or on their way to... and I'm constantly flipping to the map in the front of the books. Are you all doing that? Like, where are they in Venice and what bridge is it? Why is that important to you? Like, why does that ground you in the books?
I don't know. If I were a more cunning person, I would say, because it gives verisimilitude. If it really nails people. I don't know. Because he walks along and he sees things and he notices things and he meets people. Mm-hmm. He stops and has a coffee.
Yeah. You must be aware of the irony that you write these books and you make us want to go there. And these books are about how our going there will ruin it, right? So, are the books now published in Italian? They weren't for a long time. No. Still not.
Still not, no.
And the Italians must want them.
They don't know about them. They don't want them. No, they want them, but readers, the companies want them, but the Italians don't read a lot, and they have very, very good crime writers who are far more savage in the denunciation of Italy than I am.
Right. You said at one point that one of the reasons you didn't want them published in Italian is that you just wanted to live your life there and you didn't want to be famous.
Yeah.
But if you're not living there anymore, is it now not time to?
No, because I go down once a month.
You go down once a month, so you just don't want to be
a week
hassled.
Or two. I just don't want to. Yeah, I'm a Democrat with a big D and a small D, and I don't like the idea that one gets any special attention or treatment.
Is it the sort of terror of being known? Like you just don't want to be, you just like being anonymous enough, or is it?
No, the truth is, and this is the real truth. No, I've been in the world of opera for more than 20 years, and I observe how people treat divas. And the diva's up here, and the person who worships that person for their singing, it's always a false relationship, because it's not like that. They aren't colleagues. And I find when someone is, sometimes I am deferred to, and since I'm a North American, I don't like that, because I like an equal playing field.
Oh, honey, I know plenty of North Americans who like that. I know the whole city of Los Angeles likes that.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. Yeah.
But you really just don't, really don't.
I am limiting the discourse to this planet, so if you want to talk about Los Angeles, you are free to do so.
But you've never taken advantage of a little bit of fame. You don't sort of get up to the front of the restaurant. There's nothing about it that, no.
Because before I wrote these books, I was in an Italian restaurant, obviously I was in Italy, it was in a restaurant. I was in a restaurant one night, and a man came in. I was waiting for a table. We were waiting for a table. And a man came in and said, I'd like a table for 4. And the woman said, I'm sorry, but we're full. And he said, I'd like a table for 4. And she said, I'm sorry, but we're full. The restaurant is full. And he really said, non sa chi sono? You don't know who I am? Mm-hmm. And she said, no, I don't know who you are, and I don't care who you are. We're full. And he got huffy and walked out. And I thought, yeah, that's what can happen to people. Mm-hmm. Don't you know who I am?
So yes, you've never lost your kind of every woman quality. You haven't been seduced toward.
No, it's nonsense. Because I've seen it happen to singers, and it's to some singers, and it's not nice.
Now I want to ask you a question that I hope that you'll understand my intention. Are you surprised by your book's popularity? Because they're not typical. They're not like galloping. You know, the crimes are not the main part of the book. The crimes are sort of background to the larger social issues that you want to discuss, and the texture of Italian life and Brunetti's family life, and they're about work relationships and societal structures and all kinds of things that have nothing to do with the crimes themselves. Were you surprised that they caught on as much as they did? That people are as crazy about them as they are?
Because they're not typical bang bang shoot 'em up murder mysteries. But one thing I have observed over the years is that, or heard over the years, is many people say, I don't read murder mysteries, but my cousin gave me your books, and I like them very much. And when sometimes when I start talking about books with people who read the books, I find that they are widely read people who read real books as well. So a reference to Dickens or a reference to Jane Austen is caught by most of the readers of these books. So I think that they perhaps appeal to a reader who likes murder mysteries but doesn't like the shoot 'em up, bang bang ones, or the really violent, sexist ones. That has been my experience with readers across the board, and across national barriers. Many of the people are university graduates or professionals. Usually the readers of the books that I have spoken to fall into a different demographic than the readers of what I'll call pulp fiction.
Mm-hmm. And at one point, Paula even says people like novels because the narrator explains why people do what they do, which you do not do. You sort of deliberately leave it open-ended, and Brunetti's always sort of musing about people. He's never making conclusions.
Sometimes people tell him why they did things,
Mm-hmm.
and either he believes them or they don't. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes at the end of the books he's mystified as to
Right.
why someone could do that.
Yes, I love that about your endings, that you just let them sit. It's
Yeah.
not this triumphant, hooray, we've solved the crime. And I feel like he's made sad by the crimes. He's of all the emotions, that he could be angry or fed up or whatever, I feel at the end that he's more sad than triumphant. Do you think the books have gotten a little sadder as you've gone along?
I think they have.
Why do you think that is?
I'm older and I'm more. All right, you've seen me for however long. 50. I like to joke. I like to play. I have a sense of humor. I love to laugh, and I love to make people laugh. But that's something I can't control. That's a thing that comes from the heart. In my head, I'm a pretty pessimistic person looking at the world, simply because I interpret what I read or I am told in a particular way, and it doesn't lead to happiness and bliss. And I think that affects Brunetti as well as me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the books do grow more and more somber, and the things that happen in them grow. Well, no, they aren't getting worse, because really pretty bad things happen in many of the books. Very seldom are the things very violent, but I think that a lot of emotional violence is done in the books, and that saddens Brunetti. And his response, I think that's very an astute observation, that he is saddened. He's not angered by what he sees. Occasionally he is, but he's more saddened.
Right, and the endings are not like, woo, they're all wrapped up and it's all super
But
triumphant.
that's life.
That's life. And you also seem to me, reading them chronologically, to be inserting maybe a little bit more of your own views about, pollution, overcrowding, the Mosaic system.
Yeah.
Are these a good way for you to get your, once we have gotten to the point now where we choose, your book will be successful, someone will read it, you get to kind of choose what you put out there into the world. Are you becoming more conscious of what you want to put out into the world as you write these books?
Yeah, it's seen in the fact that the books become increasingly environmental, because Italy is just a disaster environmentally and ecologically. I mentioned last night that there exist photos that were taken from airplanes off the coast in the Mediterranean, down in Calabria. There seem to be a lot of ships, freight ships, sunk maybe 18, 20 miles off the coast. And on those boats there are barrels. And in those boats, there are barrels. One of the things that Italy did for many, many years was host the toxic waste of Northern Europe. And a lot of it ended up, they think, on those boats. Certainly a lot of it ended up being buried in Basilicata, in Calabria, in the south. I've been warned time and time again not to drink the water in, and that here, don't eat any food from, because it's all contaminated. Don't eat the mozzarella di bufala from Campania, because the water is all poisoned with something. But this doesn't, it gets into the newspapers, but it gets forgotten, and then it just goes on and on. There always, every week, there's some enormous illegal toxic dump discovered somewhere in Italy and goes into the newspapers and the magazines, and then the next week there's more discovered. I tremble at the thought of what exists underneath the soil of southern Italy. And not only in the Laguna of Venezia, there's a fair bit of gunk.
I'm going to open this up to all of you in just 2 more questions. There's a couple of times in the course of the books where Brunetti makes the comment that the law and justice are not necessarily the same thing.
Oh, tell me it is not so.
Do you feel that we've all just given up on the idea of justice or truth? Do you think that it's a hopeless thing, or do you still have hope that we can move toward it?
No, I can't say anything about it until I get a definition of justice. I know what the law is, but as to justice, I don't know. I really don't. I think it's a very, very complex idea. Our guts seem to respond to the concept of justice and can be outraged. But the law is cool and meant to be dispassionate. But I don't think they're the same.
You don't think that, yeah, and obviously neither does Brunetti then. And then, again, because of the Greeks and the Romans and the classics, this idea comes up quite a lot of vengeance versus forgiveness. And I feel like your books walk a very interesting axis about, vengeance can sometimes feel cleaner. Forgiveness, I think you mentioned the phrase, leads to moral chaos. Do you have a place where you sit on that axis, vengeance versus forgiveness?
Again, it's guts and brain. That I think the danger of vigilante justice, which I've used shamelessly in some of the books, because it's a great way to end a book. When the woman in About Face has the gun, yeah. It feels so good, but it's so wrong. It's so wrong. Vigilante justice is madness let out, however tempting it is. But I am drawn to it as a writer because it's a way that a problem can be solved. But I don't like it. It really gives me the creeps. Because then what is happening is that someone who feels offended gets to determine what the punishment will be to the person who offended him or her. And I get real nervous at that. I wouldn't like to be in a position where I had anyone ever offended me seriously, gravely, or injured me. I wouldn't want to be the one to mete out justice to that person. I really would not want that responsibility. That's the law's business.
And what do you think keeps Brunetti in it? Why do you think he keeps plugging along?
Because I think he realizes that somebody has to do it, and better he than some tough guy with a pistol who just pushes people around and forces confessions from them and does who knows what, and tinkers with the evidence and steals the dope from the room where all of the confiscated stuff is. Better he do it because he knows at least his sense of ethics. Maybe that's what keeps him going.
Well, I hope you keep him going for as long as you possibly can,
Thank you. That's
because we're
very
all
kind.
crazy about him. So thank you so much.
Thank you.